that's the way I like it. My garden's a secret compartment, and that's the way I like it, and that's the way I like it. Your body's a dream that turns violent, and that's the way I like it, and that's the way I like it. The winter is long in the city, and that's the way I like it. So please, baby, please, open your heart, catch my disease. I was
Welcome to our second newish movie. This was Carriers from 2009, starring James T. Kirk himself, Chris Pine. As a global lethal virus spreads, four friends seek a supposed plague-free haven. But while avoiding those infected, they turn against one another. Yeah, that's what happens.
Very accurate. When I was watching this last night, Erin didn't see much of it, but for some reason she brought up Zombieland, and I could actually see some slight parallels between the two, in that you have a group of people traveling together, trying to get to a place that is untouched by the plague. So,
Bill Murray is not in this
Bill
movie.
Murray is tragically not in this movie. Although Chris Maloney is. So, not quite as good, but enjoyable.
This movie is much more serious take on that idea.
I agree, though, that it has the rules and stuff that they all want to follow.
Yeah, they even, right out the bat, he's talking about rules and everything. I'm just like, wow, these are very...
And I like how they have a sort of a procedure that they go through for kind of checking out the places that they end up and making sure that everything is either sterilized or clean or
smart.
uninhabited.
Keep a lot of bleach.
Yeah, a lot of bleach on hand. Gas is at a premium. You gotta get it from wherever you can. The survivors are kind of at each other's throats. More so this group versus everybody else, more so than they are at each other's throats. They do have some obviously issues. They have obvious issues with each other. Anybody you're going to put in a high-stress situation, 4 people in a kind of confined space all the time, there's going to be some issues. So even in a non-high-stress situation, you put 4 people in a confined space for a while, there's going to be issues. So what do we like about this movie?
I generally like the cast. I think each of the 4 people they're recognizable actors. You have, I think his name is Lou Taylor Pucci. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I think so.
It kind of looks like
it's close
Pussy.
enough. He's kind of a pussy too.
He is kind of a pussy. Then you have Piper Parablo, who's from Coyote Ugly, or she has a USA.
I knew I recognized her.
Yeah, she has a USA show as well. Then you have Kirk. And then the other character is, I don't know her name, but she's on the show Revenge. She's the lead of the show Revenge, which is on ABC right now, which is a pretty decent show. So the 4 main characters are people that you know, and then you have guest appearance by the guy who's on SVU.
Yeah, Chris Maloney.
Each of those characters, they do a pretty darn good job.
Yeah, and like Johnny was saying in the last movie, you didn't get a lot of character development there, and here you really get to see them. You get to see their highs and lows, and I feel like it makes for a much more good movie, a more good. Is that proper?
More goodly?
Who knows? It makes it more enjoyable because you kind of get to know them on their downward spiral, trying to get to this mythical place where everything's gonna be okay.
One of the things that this movie touches on really neatly for a post-apocalyptic type movie is how what people were doesn't matter anymore, and how your past is in your past completely, and now it's every man for himself, and we stick together, we follow the rules, or if you don't, get the fuck out. And it doesn't matter if we're family or if we're friends, because you are going to be on your own if you screw up.
Exactly. It's all about survival. The survival instinct in these characters is incredibly strong.
And actually having decency, it seems like, in this movie it's a
hindrance.
It's weakness, and the younger brother finds that out eventually.
Well, I think they each deal with that in a very honest way.
Yeah.
It doesn't really pull any punches. I mean, they struggle with it. I mean, even the ones that are...
Even Chris Pine, who seems to be...
Even the older brother, who's kind of the guy that has, shut off his emotions in a way, and is a more cold character. he even struggles with that. I just kind of like how each of the characters struggle with that concept of, well, this is a different world, and you have to look out for your number one. You have to look out for yourself. And I also like how that revolved around the other girl who plays the character on Revenge. She's probably the meekest character of the group, and she's always looking for somebody else to do the dirty work. It's a very ugly thing to watch.
Exactly.
But it's still a very honest portrayal of, I could see myself being like that. So it's just a very interesting way to psychologically go through this movie.
I want to just point out Chris Pine, who I think is kind of the standout actor in this movie. So you don't really get to say that very often with Chris Pine, but
I think he goes a little overboard sometimes.
He in this movie or elsewhere.
In this movie,
he does, but at the same time, like he's a dude.
I think his worst moments are when he's trying to be lovey-dovey with his girlfriend,
but that's the thing is
they seem less authentic than
when you find out what he's been through. He was one of the dudes when everyone started dying. He was
digging mass graves
and shit. He's been through a lot of stuff, and his ability to keep it together at all is pretty great. He tries to be this tough character where you see him vulnerable at times, and like when you're saying it's kind of unbelievable when he's being all lovey-dovey, but like he's trying to kind of like that is kind of him trying to have some semblance of a life that used to be. So in a world where it doesn't exist anymore, like lovey-dovey is nice, but yeah, it's not super believable because there's all this craziness going on. So I don't know, like I think he's the strongest actor in this movie. Everyone else does a good job. Like I didn't think there was a bad actor in this movie. Maybe that little kid. Fuck her. Hope she died on that porta potty. But
is there anything that we didn't like about this movie?
No,
people are dicks.
I think sometimes those moments where they're trying to be lovey-dovey and intimate seemed to fit the kind of horror stereotype of like two kids in the woods in a cabin about to get it on, and then suddenly they're gonna get killed, and it just. For some reason, I don't know if it was a Pavlovian response. I was like, oh, God. Like, I just had this weird reaction to it, and I just wasn't buying it.
Yeah, there were a few moments where it seemed like they were going with the standard horror, like, we want to make you jump type thing. And it's like, almost like they were setting it up to, at certain points, like, swerve into being a zombie movie. They would be around people that were dead or, like, close to dead or whatever, and it just being really careful. And the way everything worked, it was almost as if that person was going to grab them and start biting them and, like, tearing into them. And then that never happens, and it just seems weird and out of place. And I don't understand why they kept doing that.
Well, I think it makes sense if you're in the room and you're sitting next to somebody who has a contagious disease that will probably kill you. You probably feel like that.
Okay, that's fair.
And I didn't necessarily... I understand exactly what you're saying, Johnny, and it does seem very typical Hollywood-type treatment of a horror kind of type story. But at the same point, I think it reinforces the idea of this movie that when you can be vulnerable at any point, and when you're having sex, you're pretty darn vulnerable. And so obviously this movie is going to play with that. You can't open yourself up.
And it did help. It did help to increase the tension when his girlfriend ends up having the disease and he has to tell her to get out of the car. I mean, that he loves her and he cares about her, so that it did add to that.
That's rough.
And I think, like I said, it was just some type of instinct that I had where I was like, "Oh God, here we go." Yeah,
it's totally enjoyable. I don't think it's like the best movie ever, but let's rate it. Carriers.
Yeah, I'll give this a 3. I thought it was pretty good, pretty darn good.
Like I said, I think the cast is pretty darn good. It's enjoyable. It's better than maybe you even think it's going to be, because this is an independent movie. It kind of starts out like, well, this is kind of a low budget effort, but there's never a point in this movie where you feel like it's low quality. It works. I think it's a good movie. It's 3. Watch it. You'll like it.
I'm going to give it a 3.5. I really liked it. I liked it more on the second viewing than I did the first time. I thought it was fine on the first time, but nothing special. And then I watched it again, and it's a much sweeter story than I remember. But also, that whole end of the world thing, man. It's brutal.